mud. When the rain is pouring down, you can't hold back the flood. Stampede's rolling, stampede's rolling, stampede's rolling, stampede's rolling.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Rock and Horror Podcast Show. I am Rob Nicholson, your host here in Studio 217 in Hopatcong, New Jersey, coming to you after a long, crazy summer that did not go exactly the way I planned, but I guess whatever does. I'm so glad to be back, and I am here tonight to introduce you to Anthony Masi and Nate Ragon. Anthony is the founder and president and jack of all trades of Masimedia in LA. He is one of the people who are in the horror fandom, know him from making pretty much every documentary about every horror film series that has ever been made. From His Name Was Jason to the Halloween stuff to Scream, still screaming. And we are also joined tonight by Nate Ragon, who is a film and live event producer. He has worked with Tony on Scream Comes Home. And the reason that we have him here tonight with Tony is because they are getting ready to release on Paramount Plus, Unknown Dimension, the story of paranormal activity. So it's another super documentary covering the pantheon of paranormal activity. So Anthony and Nate, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, me and Michael are happy to be here.
Nice. It is. You said this to me before the show that it's our month, and that it is. It's so close. You know, I hear the Silver Shamrock song, you know, playing in my head, you know, over and over and over and over again. So
a Scream movie was announced. Chucky's on. I know we did. It's like I know we did last. So it's like 1996 again.
Right.
Like the 90s. It's crazy.
Everything old is new again.
It's pretty weird, but I love it. I love it.
Now, Paranormal Activity is a movie that I have never allowed myself to see in a movie theater because it scares the living crap out of me. I've watched 4 of them on TV. I'm pretty sure 4 of them on TV. And I've always had to do that alone. So, you know, it's one of those things where all the lights are on, extra lights are on. I put lights outside on, you know, I just, it's not something I can just do because it literally is one of the realest things that I've seen movie wise, because I mean, ghosts, a lot of people over everything else. I mean, obviously serial killers are real and things like that, but ghosts, like I would think more people believe in ghosts than any of the other supernatural things that are out there. And the fact that it is found footage movie it even makes it more real. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that really started with The Last Broadcast and Blair Witch, and Paranormal Activity took it to another level. So the fact that you guys delved in and just broke down everything in this series is intriguing. I think the documentary is going to be awesome. I can't wait to see it. And that comes out on Paramount Plus in October 29th.
Yeah.
And it's being released the same day as the new Paranormal Activity movie, correct?
Yes, which is called Next of Kin.
Thank you.
I think when we go into Paramount Plus, you should see both, you know, just like the homepage is probably going to be both projects.
Cool. So I'm going to start with Nate. I've known Tony for a long time, 20 plus years.
98.
Yeah. Halloween H2O.
Yep.
So why don't you, Nate, tell us how you hooked up with Tony, what brought this idea for the documentary about? Because as I understand, it was something that was a brainchild of yours that kind of, you know, you wanted to do this and boom. So go ahead.
All right. So I got, I guess, hooked up with Anthony. Was it 2010?
Yeah, around Scream 4 movie and Still Screaming. Yeah.
Yeah, so Scream 4 had just been announced, and that's a world that I'm heavily involved in. It's my favorite like slasher series, horror series of all time. I've have a ton of stuff that was even like used in the movies and just all sorts of everything, and was in contact with a lot of people that worked on the films. And so Scream 4 basically had just been announced, and all of a sudden I'm seeing these stories that there was a documentary in the works on the Scream series, Scream 1 through 3. And just without even like reading the whole article, I was like, I have to be a part of this somehow. Somehow I have to be a part of this. They have to know what I have and what I know and who, like, I have to be a part of this. So I just looked for a name. The first name that popped up was Anthony Masi, Masimedia. So I'm immediately like Googling, trying to find his contact information. So I found his email and I sent him this probably embarrassingly like long fan email of like, oh my gosh, like I've seen all your documentaries and I'm the biggest Scream fan. I have to be involved in this. And I totally didn't even expect him to respond, but he responded like literally that day and more or less said, every time we do one of these projects, we always wait for like that email. Like there's always somebody connected to every series that's like, oh, that's the guy. Okay, that's who we need to, yes, we need to talk to you. So yeah, I got a chance to be in the documentary, feature a lot of my collection. Basically we stayed in touch ever since. We ended up, down the road doing Still Screaming together, which was the live event at the Scream House.
Scream comes home.
And yeah, so I guess as far as how we got to this documentary, obviously I knew all the previous documentaries that he had done. I kind of always was like nudging him towards like, you should do another one like about this and that. And everything was just kind of like, yeah, well, there's a lot of information about that out there, like everything I'd say, well, there's not a documentary about this yet. It'd kind of be like, yeah, well, there's 20 Blu-ray releases of this and they're loaded with bonus features. So it kind of like begs the question of like, what's the point? So then my son Channing, who was 8 at the time, he's a big horror fan as well. And I try to introduce him to new horror movies slowly. And we got to Paranormal Activity. I introduced him to the first one, showed it to him. He loved it. We had a blast watching it. And after it was over, as he normally does, he started asking me questions about it. Like, well, how did they do this? How did they do that? Normally I have those answers because those answers are out there. And I just kind of was like dumbfounded. I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, there's no information about these out there. There's no bonus features. There's no commentaries. There's nothing on any. I had all of them on Blu-ray. I'm looking at all 6 of them. Like there's no bonus features on this whole entire series. So literally that night I called Anthony on the phone and I said, did you know that there's no bonus features on any of the Paranormal Activity movies? And he said,
I said, that can't be right. Like, I just was like, that's impossible. Like, how is, like, every series is so well documented. And so, I mean, obviously I believed him, but I guess I couldn't believe it. It was more like, are you serious? Like, not even a commentary? And there wasn't. So it sounded like here's the thing. When you're making these documentaries, there's a lot of variables. Like Halloween had 2 studios involved, well, actually 3 entities involved. There's music, there's rights, there's all these different things that make it complicated. With Paranormal Activity, there were 6 movies at the time, all made by Paramount, only a few cast and crew for each movie, and there was no music, and it wasn't documented. There's no bonus feature, so it made sense to do it because it was like waiting to be made. And I knew that if we didn't do it, someone else was going to do it. And that's a really big motivator for me.
Now it's one of those movies, obviously, a la Blair Witch, a la Last Broadcast, that part of that seems almost by design. Like I remember seeing the first movie and saying exactly what your son said, Nate. How the hell did they do that? And I just, all of it together was like, wait a second, they're filming this with a like a handheld camera, like a video camera, and I don't understand how this happened. How is this stuff moving? Oh my God, this is really real. And it takes you into that scary place where you really don't know exactly what's going on, because if you remember with Blair Witch, I'm sure both of you do, that the marketing campaign on that was so well done. And I feel it was just as well done with Paranormal Activity when Paranormal Activity was finally released to the masses, because it had been out for how long beforehand? When was the first time it was ever seen before it came to the movie theater? That was beforehand, correct?
Didn't you see it, Nate? You're one of the first people.
Well, I guess the first time it was seen would have been Screamfest, and that was like almost 2 years before it was released theatrically.
My producing partner on Unknown Dimension is Rachel Bolofsky, and she runs Screamfest. And Oren Pelly made this $15,000 movie, and before, it wasn't with a studio or anything. He just made this home movie and then looked to submit it to festivals. And Rachel was the only person to accept it. It got turned down by other festivals. So that's where it first premiered, and it had a different ending. And I think that was in 2007. And then the movie came out in 2009 by Paramount through a campaign they had called Demand It. And it was like this campaign that they was like, if you want to see Paranormal Activity, you have to demand it. And so they went to colleges, and they had this really sort of clever campaign. And that is when people started to see it. And yeah.
It just, like I said, with the bonuses and the extras, it just seems it was almost by design. Now I don't know going forward with the other movies if that was still by design, but it kind of feels like, Paranormal Activity is the type of movie that you should like be up at a cabin and just find like sitting there, on a blank VHS tape to see what happened.
We talk about it. It's like they didn't want all the bonus features and behind the scenes, and there's no merch.
Didn't Oren say that in his interview that they were kind of conscious about they were always about selling it, the realism.
Absolutely,
and, like he said, I think he specifically said they were never trying to trick people like the way Blair Witch tried to be like, no, this is real, and these people are really disappeared, and here's missing flag. We never tried to trick them like that, but he said basically that they were always kind of conscious about the real aspect of it is what kind of made it work, and so they didn't want some big bonus features.
Yeah, I mean, my Michael Myers mug. Like there's no Paranormal Activity merchandise really.
What are you gonna do? Put Katie on a mug?
Right, or Ghost they call Toby. There's no Toby merchandise.
Right.
It's interesting because if you go to a horror convention, you see Friday 13th and Scream and Halloween and all that. There's nothing on Paranormal Activity, and yet Paranormal Activity is one of the highest grossing horror franchises of all time. It's almost $1 billion.
I was just gonna say that. Yep.
Very, very, very little merchant. I don't think there is any. I think there's T-shirts, something like that. That's
all the stuff that's out there was like promotional stuff. Really, nothing's like licensed. I don't even know if you can license.
Like there's no NECA. There's no NECA or anything. I mean, I have NECA everything in this room, and
I would totally buy like a demonic Katie figure. Like who?
Yeah. Like I want like Katie coming up to the camera, in that that burst.
You can have like a little bedroom diorama set with the bed and little Katie and Mika figures.
There you go.
Little camera.
Hey, you know what? There's another Kickstarter campaign. I have no creative muscles like that. I can't do that. Like this is Mr. Me. I couldn't make him. So you guys, well, you came to Tony, Nate, correct?
Yeah.
With the idea. You guys started not a Kickstarter, Indiegogo campaign. I see you roll your eyes.
Listen, I've used Kickstarter twice. We have, Nate and I have both used it Like one time it was successful, like we got our money and we did this great thing, and this time it like fell on its ass, and it was like we reached like 3% of our goal.
Yeah.
It was mind-boggling because and we had people saying things like, let me get this straight, the series makes $800 million and these guys have to scrounge for pennies to make a documentary, and that really was the snapshot of it. No one just forks out money, and Paramount ultimately getting involved. I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but like we can just knock on Paramount's door and say, hey, can you give us money? And they're sure, right? No, it's not like that. And so we started, and you start different ways. These projects start different ways. I thought, hey, let's do a Kickstarter or some crowdfunding, platform.
Sure.
It would work, and it didn't. And so we changed course. And what you do, every project, you change course. So I just started putting money into it because I've done that before. You put money into it just to kind of get it going. And then it's like a snowball. It just keeps growing, and then it lands somewhere. I mean,
I was actually I was kind of shocked that the Indiegogo didn't take off as much as it probably should have. And I remember reading your final post there, and you were like, well, that didn't work the way we thought it was going to, but now this is what's going on. And Paramount is getting involved, which is just, you have the luck of, I don't know what. I was going to call it the luck of the Irish, but you're Italian, so it's what's that?
Let me tell you what happened. I mean, how it happened, because a couple of my other documentaries, the fact that they make a new movie, like the His Name Was Jason documentary, the fact that they were rebooting Friday the 13th, that was the reason why Anchor Bay wanted to make that documentary, because they even put a movie ticket in the DVD box. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like, yes, a new movie. So it justified the reason for the retro. Same thing with Scream. Once they announced a new movie, it was like, great, we can do a Scream documentary. Psycho, it was the 50th anniversary. It justifies the release. So when I gotta be honest, when we did the Indiegogo campaign and it failed, I was like, unless they make another Paranormal Activity movies, it's probably not gonna. It's going to take a while to land. It's going to find a distributor. But right in the middle of making it, they announced that they were making a 7th movie. In fact, when we interviewed Jason Blum at that time, we said, is there going to be another movie? And he's like, no. I mean, he's like, unless it's an incredible angle for the story, we're not going to make it. And then, of course, so it was after his interview that we end up getting news that they're remaking a movie. And then once that happened, Rachel and I did everything we could to get a meeting over at Paramount, and Rachel cracked that, and we went in. I laid out all of my other documentaries on the table, and it was these 5 women. It was the first meeting I've ever been in, by the way, with 6 people. They were all women, which was really cool. And everybody was picking up the DVDs, and they're like, these actually sell? And I'm like, yeah, this is what fans want now. And so that's really what happened. And after that, they were like, we want to do this. And then began the process of negotiating. And it took a good 4 or 5 months, maybe after that, because now we were in the pandemic. That was right before the pandemic. So while we were in the pandemic, we sealed the deal and edited, and we just delivered. Like literally yesterday, we delivered our very last element to Paramount. So the delivery process is like are you familiar with delivery? Yeah, it's just when you're done, they have a list of things they need. It took us July 1st through yesterday to deliver everything. It was a nightmare, but it took that long. So anyway, that's really what happened. It was the announcement of the 7th movie that gave Paramount the incentive to work with us.
But now still, I mean, you walk into a pitch meeting, and I'm not paying you lip service, but I mean, you've done every documentary that is out there pretty much for horror series. So at the end of the day,
yeah,
well, I mean, you didn't, not Crystal Lake Memories, which is, I'm just stupid good. But that's it's almost like having a meeting where Steven Spielberg comes in and says, okay, well, I want to do, XYZ. If you're the production company, you're sitting there going, wait a second, we can have this guy doing this, and look at everything. I mean, your resume is just, it's huge. I mean, and I, from what Nate said too, I mean, if I wanted to make a documentary on whatever in horror, and even, I mean, other things, because you know the process, you know who you need to talk to in any given series. You know what to do. So you're the person I'm going to reach out to. Did Paramount, was there any stumbling block with getting that done, or was it you walked into that pitch meeting?
Studios don't just pass out money to do things like this. So normally you have to, and these are kind of unique niche projects. So I was shocked that the woman who actually left the company, but the woman who acquired it, she was the one that was telling the other 4 ladies that were there, we want to do this. And there was a home video person there, and I don't want to say names, but she's like, well, I don't know. Is this something we want? And it was the first time that I didn't have to sell the idea. I mean, who needs that? They have their own market. All horror movies, all movies have their own advertising and marketing campaigns, and we're trying to shoehorn in this other project. So I think people have that impression like, oh, Paranormal Activity makes perfect sense, give them the money. No, you have to still fight for it. But this was the first time that Rachel and I were like looking at each other going, she's on the inside and she's trying to sell their team. And she pretty much told everybody, we're doing this. So all I had to do was lay out the product. You know, I attended a distribution seminar when I first moved to LA, because I was just doing 25 Years of Terror. So I was just getting in the business, and I was taking seminars and all that. And I remember there are still 2 things that I remember from this seminar that I still use today to help sell my projects. And you have to answer 2 questions when you do a project like this. Number 1, why you, right? And so anyone who's listening out there who wants to like learn something about this is what I have to tell you. So what you just said was right. I'm the guy, like I'm one of the guys that does these things. So laying out all my product on the table was just like, well, that answers that question. I've done Scream and this and that and the other thing. But then it's what's your access? So we had just interviewed, well, actually, we had brought a list of people that we had already interviewed. So I slid across the table this 8.5 by 11 that had a list of 30 something names of people we had already interviewed. And I remember the woman, I won't say her name, but she picked it up and she goes, oh, wait a minute, you already interviewed these people, or this is, and I said, yeah, we have them filmed. So that was my access. We had Oren, Katie, Mika, and like 30 other people from all the movies. So I answered those 2 questions. So it came down to, are we going to do this with you or aren't we? And they could have said no. And then we would have found another way to distribute it. We had talked to a couple of companies. We talked to Shout Factory. I thought Shout Factory was perfect fit for it. I met with them I've done stuff with Shout Factory, and they kind of strung us along and then said, you know, hey, yeah, we're not interested. And I was like, why? Like, are you kidding me? There was another company, I probably shouldn't be mentioning names, but I won't. I won't continue mentioning names. But I'm glad we landed at Paramount and that they believed in us, because, you know, these things are appreciated. You have to build it, and then you know, suddenly they appreciate it. But it's not easy. It's not easy to get these things done. Everyone thinks it is, but it's very hard to get people interested in a project like this.
And for horror fans, it's I remember the first, I want to say it was one of the first documentary type things that I had ever seen. And it was the bonus disc that came with a Nightmare on Elm Street box set. It was called the Nightmare Encyclopedia. And it was such a great piece of work. And I was like, why don't they do this for everything? And then over the years, and so when DVDs first came out, one of the biggest things was that we could watch audio commentary. It would feel like we were sitting there with the director or one of the stars. And I remember when that first came out, I was like, this is stupid. I don't need people talking to me when I'm trying to watch the movie. I want to watch the damn movie. Right. But, you know, for someone like all of us here that have seen a Halloween or a Scream or a Paranormal Activity 97 times, in different, you know, colors, different, you know, different everything, aspect ratios, widescreen, you know, watching that with someone like, for instance, Halloween, Gina and I watched it with John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis, and it was one of the best audio commentaries I had ever heard, because Jamie Lee and John Carpenter were like going at it like
Right.
husband and wife, like they were sitting behind me, and it was a fantastic way to watch a movie. So, you know, as time evolved, and it's not just horror anymore. I think it's happening with so many other things. I mean, there's 9 million documentaries about Star Wars or Star Trek, or any of those series of movies, and people, they have that thirst and that hunger for knowledge. When they see something on the screen, they want to know why it was done that way, or how that special effect was done. You know, how did someone levitate above the bed? It's almost like, and Tony, you understand this probably more than anybody, it's almost like a magician, you know, giving out their secrets, you know, but in a good way. It's not a bad thing. So
Yeah, I think horror movies are made up of extraordinary effects, and you know, the acting is not over the top, but extra challenging in horror movies. And so, yeah, I agree. And I have a fascination about, you know, how did they do this, and behind the scenes and stuff like that. So for Unknown Dimension, we actually had Paramount Archives looking for like alternate footage and deleted scenes and things like that. And we do include some of it. And it was really cool because, you know, they went in their vaults and dug around it. They'd be like, we've got something. And I would drive down there and I'd go pick up a DVD and run home and watch it. And it's like, oh my God, this scene that they filmed, which was so amazing, is not in it. You know, so I love seeing that stuff myself. So I kind of like curating it, putting it in some kind of narrative, and then serving it up, because, you know, who else is going to do it? You know, if, yeah. And so Oren gave us, oh my God, how much was it? Like an hour or so, Nate, of?
It's about 80 minutes, roughly.
So when he was filming Paranormal Activity with Katie and Mika, you know, they were up all night, delirious every night for like 7 nights. And he had someone filming him, and they, you know, we've got footage that no one's ever seen. And we packed that first section with all this behind the scenes stuff. That is so cool. They explain how they pull Katie out of the bed, and because when you watch that scene, you're like, the movie was $15,000. How did they do these special effects? And he sings like a bird, because he tells you exactly what he did, and it's so simple you won't believe it. You're like, that's what the guy did, and he scared the shit out of you. And so it was pretty amazing. But he forked it all over. Once he said, well, I'm not doing it until I know Paramount's on board. So I had someone from legal say, yes, Oren, you can give these guys your stuff. But Nate, it was just for you and I, like watching this, it was amazing for us. So we had fun putting it all together. And our director, we have to mention Joe Bandelli. Joe is, he's made 3 found footage movies. He produced the Hell House LLC series. And so Nate was actually cast in the 3rd movie. And I knew Joe, and I said, hey, my friend Nate lives where you're filming. And Nate showed up, right? And he ended up cast in it. And he said, hey, Anthony's looking for a director. And Joe, we were looking for had been talking to some people, and no one was quite fitting. No one was quite gel. Like, you need to find someone who really wants to do something like this. And Joe jumped at the chance, and Nate pointed him my way. And in a couple days, he was our director. And Joe was great to work with, had a solid vision, and I think did an incredible job with the documentary.
Going into this, you just said you had 30 interviews already lined up, or already done in the can, so to speak. So that was, you did those 30 interviews knowing this is what you were going to do, you were going to pitch, and this is what you wanted to create, this documentary no matter what. So it wasn't just like, it was all meant for this documentary.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and we would have people ask me at the interviews, you know, where's this going to premiere? You know, like for instance, if you're doing like I was interviewing the A&E Halloween documentary years and years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, A&E's Halloween Inside Story. You know, so They funded, they set it up, and so when you're there, you know it's for A&E. Well, it's always very awkward when you're shooting something and you don't have a distributor yet. So I say the perfect thing. I've just figured out what to say. I basically say, well, we don't have distributor yet, but all my documentaries end up distributed. So, and it just seems to be the Band-Aid that, but once we had Paramount on board, it was like, oh, Paramount's distributing it. Oh, great. They don't need details. So, but yeah. So, but another thing is the very smart thing you do when you do one of these projects is you get the main people. So we had already emailed Oren, Katie, and Mika. Those were our first 3 interviews. And so invariably, when you're asking other people to be interviewed, they say, well, did Oren do an interview? And you want to be able to say yes.
Right.
So we did that with Wes Craven. We did that with, it's just kind of a thing. You get them in early. Because if, Oren, Katie, Mika said no, it wouldn't have worked. I would have just said to Neat, it's a great idea, but they're not working with us. Fortunately, they did, and we got them fast, and then it was easier to set up everybody else.
And for those listeners and watchers who don't know, Tony had Wes Craven in his house, or you were at Wes Craven's house? No,
yeah.
He was there.
Do you know what it's like to have Wes knock on your door? You open the door, and it's like Wes Craven.
I just watched New Nightmare again the other day, and I love that movie. There's a lot of people that don't like New Nightmare. I think it's one of the best Nightmare on Elm Streets, period. Because it's so Wes. And just watching him, with the back and forth between Heather and himself, it was fantastic. And knowing that he was in your presence, or you were in his presence in your own house. I mean, that just
listen to me when I tell you that I'm literally sitting in the spot where he was sitting. This room, I have a multi-floor house, and this floor was like I draped it in black, and we used it as like it was a little studio. Mm-hmm. And so we had a set over here that had all the screen masks and stuff like that. And literally, he was literally sitting right here. He gave us 3.5 hours, something like that, and we did. Oh, it was awesome. He was amazing. Yeah.
Now, were you there, Nate? When that one, you weren't around then. Okay. Yeah, it's sort of like, I mean, I guess that would be like meeting George Lucas or meeting Steven Spielberg, someone that created, or John Carpenter. I would love to have John Carpenter sitting right here, just BSing with me about everything he's done. But I digress. We're not all Anthony Masi.
He's a very nice, gentle person, and
right.
Every interview I've ever seen, everyone says that. But he got angry during the interview because we asked him about the opening to Scream 2, and the story. Scream 2's opening was on the internet, that night that it was like, it ruined the whole thing. And I remember he got visibly angry, and he looked at the camera, and he's like, and he's talking to this guy who did it. And he's like, and no one will ever see it, you little pencil dick, and he's looking at the camera. And I remember the room, we were all like, oh, Wes is getting mad. Like, it was a weird, and then like a switch, he just flipped off. Being nice, and was angry, and then flipped it back on, and he was nice again. But you could see he was visibly angry, and I think he really wished he had filmed that opening. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, and again, when it's your creation and something happens like that, and things that I've created, things that you guys have created, when not, I mean, you're allowed to get angry. It's your baby. It's your creation, and if something is amiss or gets screwed up and can ruin things for people, obviously you're going to get mad. So I mean, that's there's nothing wrong with that, but just the fact that you had him there, just and I know we went off tangent there, was just incredible. So Nate, where were you fitting in the interviews? What were you doing? What were you doing the interviews? Was Tony? Was it a combination of both of you?
So as far as like lining up the interviews, that was basically what I was assigned. There was a handful of the interviewees that, Anthony handled or Rachel handled, just because they had much easier access. And so as far as like nailing down the interviews, that was mostly me with the majority of them. But like I said, there was that handful that was like, I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I'd be like, or somebody might have said no. And I'd be like, Anthony, they said no, and he'd be like, okay, let me, follow up. And we had someone from part 6 that was adamantly not interested in talking about their experience at all. And I think I tried twice. I think Anthony tried. And then finally, we had Joe. Joe sent a very passionate email to this person, basically saying, the vision for the film and why it was important that they participated. So they ended up saying yes. I was, as far as physically being there, I was there for Oren and Katie and Mika's interview, which we did at the house from Paranormal Activity 2. Yeah.
Great.
And, yeah, that was quite an experience. The homeowners were awesome though. They were great. They were great.
There's some stories. Yeah,
They were great though.
Are those stories that we will see in the documentary?
Probably not. So, well, it's interesting because, it's interesting when you see the documentary, you really won't see the locations where we shot the interview. I mean, so we're interviewing Katie, Mika, and Oren. They're actually sitting there in the house, and the background for them is actually the kitchen. You know that in the scene in part 2 where the cabinet doors blow open?
Yes.
It's one of the great scenes. That's where we were filming, and so you can see the kitchen back of them, and it's really great. But you really don't. It's not filmed so that you can know that they were there. Oh, actually, Nate, the very last shot of the doc, you can probably figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing is like another thing about a documentary like this is when you are doing you have a vision of what it's going to look like, but then it's a very collaborative process, right? So when Joe comes on, and now it's like, so Rachel and I had this vision, and Nate and Rachel, we're all talking about it, and then we get our director, and then he wants to do something else, and you have to be like, you have to mold and be pliable and go with the flow. It's a collaborative art. So so I don't know where I was going with all this, but we were actually at the house, and it was really cool to have Oren. Oren is Israeli. Is that right? Is that right, Nate?
Yep.
Yeah. So the people that own the house are also Israeli, and so they were talking in another language, and we're kind of and we're looking at each other like, what are they saying? But it was just really cool. Everyone there was like excited to be there. And Oren was like, oh, I haven't been back here in years. And Katie and Mika are hugging, and like they're all reunion. It was just a great day. It was just a fantastic day. And we captured all that energy. And
that's awesome.
Documentary. So.
Now, so I mean, I have to imagine that most of the people, except for a few, as Nate said, the one person, were probably very happy to go back and talk about something that either had a big impact on their life or they were happy to be a part of. I mean, when you're talking about a almost $1 billion, film series, it's nice to know that you're a part of it, whether you were just, a production assistant or a director or a star. It's got to be nice to know that you're a part of it. But I'm sure there are also people, like Nate said, that were like, I don't want anything to do with this. It was a horrible experience on the set or whatever. And I mean, those things happen. I've been involved in projects where for whatever reason, something didn't go right for one person or multiple people. And, I'm sure they'll never want to talk about it again. It's over, it's water under the bridge. But it seems like you have a lot more on the good side than the bad side. So I'm intrigued about the person that didn't want to be interviewed and then ended up with a passionate email coming back to come do that, because that's
highlight something that I want to point out is that there's a lot of people watch documentaries and they go, oh, this looks like so easy, just people talking and film clips and stuff, and it's really difficult. And like I told Nate, and I said, listen, Nate's our co-producer, and so we're like, all right, you're gonna help us book all of our interviews, and I said, get ready, it's like 20 emails, phone calls, a lot of following up. You have to be like professionally persistent without being annoying, and like, so whenever somebody shows up, they actually show up and they're in the chair, like everyone's excited because they're there. And and so I can't stress that enough. Like in Halloween, the documentary, we interviewed like 80 something people, and every time someone came in, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe. Same thing, his name was Jason. It's like every hour on the hour, they were actually walking through. It takes so much work to get, you don't just make one phone call and they're there.
Right. Right. And I mean, we've been friends for a long time, Tony. And I remember phone calls, that went on for hours, it seemed like sometimes. And I just remember the excitement in your voice saying, "Oh my God, you're never going to believe that, I talked to this person or that person or the other person." And I still remember, when you got to meet Mustafa, it just, oh my God. I was like, here's the Jesus Christ of Halloween. And you're like, you're breaking bread with him, and he loved you. So
He liked
well,
me.
who doesn't?
Well, I don't know. People don't like me, all right. But I remember when I interviewed to become webmaster of Halloween movies, I walked in and he said he asked me. He asked me. I was sitting there with Malik, and Malik was looking at my website, and I had all these leaves falling. Remember Myers Museum and all the.
I do.
And I remember Malik said, "Well, you look like you know what you're doing, and this and that." And most of it is in the doorway. And I remember thinking, like, "Am I in a dream?" Because like it was like you said, like he's the god of horror. And I remember he asked me, he said, "Tony, what's the reason why people like the Halloweens so much?" I loved his accent. And you know what I said? I said, "I honestly can't put my finger on it." I said, "But I know how to keep them engaged. I know I'll keep them mobilized and engaged." And I think that was the right thing to say, because he went, "My son here knows more about the Halloweens. You'll be working mostly with him." But yeah, very surreal experience. Like horror fans, I find that are, and I'm a fan. I just happen to be doing professional things, but I'm always a fan. We're passionate about our art. You're doing, the fact that you're talking to us about all of this. I mean, there's a small amount of people that care about this stuff.
Yeah.
And our job is to serve it up, make it great. And what we said to Paramount was Unknown Dimension is going to mobilize people to seek out the previous 6 films in the movie, and you'll just re-engage fans. And I think when somebody really hears that, that's usually not listening to that kind of message. Like in marketing, they see the value in it. They still have to see value in you at the end of the day. Why should we pay you for this? Why should we fund this? Why should we give you time of day? And you have to, you can't just say it's going to be great. You have to say it's going to bring value.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where your cachet, from before helps. And I mean, you lining up the history of Masimedia documentary work. I mean, obviously, like we said, that does help. But so your interview process starts, you have 30 going in. How many interviews did you do for the doc?
It's just under 40. I mean,
okay.
Paramount almost completed, because what I was going to prepare to say to them was, well, we're still going to make this. We could still have made Unknown Dimension without Paramount. It's just a little more challenging, and it made so much easier when they came on board. But our position was, you can't stop us from making this. That's the truth. I mean, we have rights. Nate and I have rights as filmmakers. You don't need someone's permission to do anything. But it makes things more challenging. Like, how would we be able to use footage if Paramount's not on board? Things like that. You can still do it.
So is that really where, I mean, that's where they do most of that heavy lifting? In other words, you can now use, obviously, because it's on their streaming service. You can pretty much they opened up the vaults, as you said. So
they opened the vaults, but like you still have and nothing's easy. Just letting you know, there's nothing easy. And when we did Halloween, so like with Halloween, same thing. Like, well, now we can use copious amounts of footage from all the Halloween. No, it doesn't work that way. But it does make things a lot easier. We certainly couldn't have dug for behind the scene. All you could probably do if we weren't working officially with Paramount was talk about those scenes, but not show any footage, because they're not going to go digging through the vaults for someone they're not officially working for, probably. So that helped. It opens the door and makes things easier, is what it does.
We've come a long way from the Myers Museum VHS tapes.
VHS tapes.
Some of them I still have. I think I still have my original P cut.
I've got the whole set. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you have to put pictures of those up one day.
I will.
More and more of the Myers Museum is missing from the Wayback Machine. It seems like it's falling off.
No.
Yeah, so I went back in there and I saved my novel and the little pieces that were up there. I saved all the reviews, especially the one where he says the guy says I love Robert's writing, he takes my breath away. I was like, that's awesome. Because I mean that was back in that was the not the early days of the internet, but it was still relatively early. I remember you studying HTML, in the apartment in Lake Hiawatha.
Back then, I had the sense to create a Halloween website like right away. And it wasn't to work in the business. I just wanted to highlight like my photos and my collection. When you build a website, you have to have content. So my content was, well, hell, I'll just throw my Halloween collection up there. But if I wanted to do that now, nobody would care. Like I just happened to get like timing is one thing I've learned in this business too. Like the website was timed, not purposely, but it was timed wonderfully. Just happened to be timed that way. And then I got hired by the Akkads because of my website. And then I was doing a convention. And so then I became a producer that way. So there were a lot of things that clicked for me that have served me very well in my career. So
Nate, what's your origin story? Where do you come from? I know Tony. I mean, I could almost tell you as much about Tony as he probably can about himself, but it all goes back to a cat, some grenadine, and some Coke. not Coke, not Coke, not blow, but Coke.
Oh, so cherry Coke.
Cherry Coke. Do you have grenadine? Right. Do you have Coke? Oh, we miss you, Jonathan. We miss you a lot. We love you, Jonathan. So go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania, still live here. Just kind of grew up, like I imagine everybody else here on this podcast that love horror. Just kind of got into it at a very early age. Stuck with me. It was pretty much my main passion. Scream was really the one that was the one I latched on the most to. I mean, obviously I was a huge fan of everything else, like Friday the 13th and Halloween, all those, of course, and all the obscure stuff. But when I saw Scream for the first time, it just kind of was like, it felt more real. It felt like you could identify with the characters. It was the first time I saw a slasher movie that seemed to exist where the characters were aware of what a slasher movie was, and they're talking about these movies. So I just that was like my main passion was horror and the Scream series. And yeah, basically I always wanted to do something with film, but I wasn't ever really sure what. Like like every young person, it was like, do I want to be an actor? Do I want to be a director? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? Never really thought about producing because I guess I didn't really understand what exactly a producer did.
I still don't.
Yeah. I learned very quickly that a producer does pretty much everything at some point, which is what makes producing fun, which I learned from Anthony. And he was the one that at some point, I can't even tell you when, but I just know at some point I said something in one of our many conversations and he was like, you're talking and thinking like a producer now. And I was like, I am. And he's like, yes. And I was like, okay, maybe that's what I want to be.
See, when Gina and I started Dockside, and we got waylaid by the COVID pandemic, which is still going on. But when we started, I made it very clear. I want to create. I don't want any part of the business side of things. I mean, I'm sure I'll be involved at some point with that just because my name is attached to everything. But I mean, and Tony probably knows this as well as anyone, I love to create things. I love to write. I love to act, but I mean, writing and creating is really my passion. So, but when it came time that, Gina and I decided that we wanted to start something, it was very important to me that we divest those two things so we both understand where we are, where she'll still have creative control with me, but it's like I don't I don't want to know about money. I don't want to know about that kind of, it just, that has no interest to me. Let me create, let me make art. And I'll get involved where I have to. And I have people, you know, we both have people that we can lean on, both in the different industries, whether it be theater, whether it be film. We know people that we can reach out to and say, hey, listen, we're having a problem with this. Or, you know, we need to do X, Y, or Z. And it makes it even stranger for me because, you know, not only am I now the co-owner of a, you know, of a production company, but I'm also the creator. So, you know, in trying to navigate, and I've been reading, I've been, you know, talking to different people, lawyers too, you know, like what do I do as the owner about something that I created and made and wrote, and I still want to retain the rights to it. I don't want to sell the rights, you know, to myself. I don't, you know, I didn't know how any of that worked, and I've learned a lot. And I'll kick back to your Producerville podcast, which is now inactive, but there, I'm going to turn Gina on to that as well, because I went back and I listened to it and I was like, oh my God, I said, this is like really, really interesting. And, you know, it's great information. And that, for those who don't know, go ahead and go into any one of your favorite podcasting platforms where you listen to this or whatever, and look up Producerville. It's Nate and Anthony, and you'll get some great insights. I still don't know what a producer does.
Isn't that amazing? Well, I'll tell you in a nutshell, a producer is they're the visionary of the project. They navigate the ship. They're the people responsible for the vision, and they oversee it. So like my job as a producer was to find a team and then to realize the vision. And so Joe was, you know, a very important key because he was our director. So once, you know, I talked to him and knew that he could deliver the vision that we had in mind. I mean, you know, we're creating something I think is a little obvious. You know, it's like, we're going to tell the story of all the 6 movies. And it's kind of been a thing that's been done enough to know what the vision is. But, you know, that's really what a producer does. But then there's the business side. And so you really do need to know business. Like I couldn't have gone into Paramount and said, yeah, we're going to do this for you, but don't talk to me about numbers. You know, you have to negotiate, and then you get contracts, and then you have to go through the deliverables, and you have to know what the deliverables are, and you have to know what you're committing to. So it's a scary process. I mean, I've done all kinds of deliverables and all kinds of deals, and some of them are easy and some of them are hard, and some of them are with tiny companies, some of them are with big companies, but you do need to know business to be a producer. Producers typically don't have agents. You know, so writers, directors, actors, all those people have agents. Producers typically don't, because they're the ones that deal with all the agents and actors and writers and stuff like that. So you're kind of the driving force of the project, and you're the most responsible person on the project. You're usually the one that writes the checks. I'm still writing checks for Unknown Dimension. You're the person that solves the problems. You know, an editor edits. That's all they do. Producer oversees the editing, oversees this,
Right.
and oversees that. And so you're the problem solver, and you wear lots of hats. So we don't just put jelly beans on the craft service table, which a lot of people say, like, oh, is that what they do? Because typically when a producer shows up on set, they sit in a chair in the back, and you know, but that by that point they've done all their work. You know, when we did our interviews, and we did most of our interviews in Burbank in a little studio, we had to scout that location and book it and all that. And so we find locations, and we write up the release forms and all that stuff. So that's what
I think maybe people just get confused between, you know, like when they're watching a sitcom or whatever, and in the final seasons of the show, everybody is a damn executive producer, you know, because that's exactly what happens. And for instance, in a movie that I just did with Ryan Calloway for Shady Dawn Pictures, we were scouting a location, and the only thing the guy wanted in order to use his house, instead of giving him money, he wanted an executive producer credit. And I was like, well, that's really easy. I said, you know, and Ryan was all on board with that. And I was like, okay, so maybe an executive producer doesn't do as much as I thought they did.
Well, listen, two very different things. An EP and a producer are very different things in television and in movies. So they're very different things. There's all producers, and so yeah, they all, and sometimes an executive producer, they fund the entire movie. That's a big thing. Sometimes they get credit because you're able to shoot in their house all night long. And so, but the producer is usually the day-to-day, and we're talking about like a movie, like Unknown Dimension. The producer is the day-to-day person that's responsible. I don't think, do we even have an executive producer on the project, Nate? I don't think we do.
I don't think.
Yeah.
And so that's still odd, because now so who is the producer of Unknown Dimension? Or are you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Me and Rachel Bolofsky. We're the
okay.
Right.
Okay. So you co-produce, or you both have whatever that title would be.
Yeah. Nate is our co-producer.
Okay.
Which
so
is
producer
that supports the producer. So it's like, Nate, do this, Nate, do that, Nate, do this, Nate, do that. And he supports the role of the producer pretty much. And plus, it was Channing, his son's idea. So, and it was like, well, right there, like, if Channing hadn't asked you, Nate, I don't think we would have made this. We put a t-shirt that says Big Time Hollywood Producer on it, because it's like, it really was his idea. Like, he didn't make it, but it was his idea. And it was kind of cool to I like that. I like that it was like the brainchild of an 8-year-old, like that.
Yeah.
This thing. I always love that.
That's kind of awesome. And it's one of those things where until it comes out, you don't even realize that you either needed it or wanted it. And then you look at it and you're like, holy crap, where has that been for the past, how long has Paranormal Activity been around? You didn't even know you needed it. I mean, it's easy to say, and I mean, Paranormal Activity is sort of going there because just to the longevity of it does start to fall into a Halloween or a Friday the 13th or a Scream type. It's going to have that legacy, and obviously if something's going to get a documentary made about it, it has a legacy. For me, the legacy is scaring the hell out of me, probably more than anything but The Conjuring, which I still won't watch. Have not watched any of them. I lie and I say that I won't ever watch it because I know I will. But yeah, Dolls. There's certain things that just creep the hell out of me, but Dolls. I can get through Paranormal Activity because I find it fascinating. I find ghosts fascinating.
In one of the Paranormal Activity movies, there's a Teddy Ruxpin doll that starts, communicating. In the first movie, it's a Ouija board, right? And then by the time they get to, was it part 3 that has a Teddy Ruxpin, or is that 4?
3.
Yeah. And then you get to part 5, and it's like there's a Simon game. Remember that old Simon game? And like, and the movie's kind of embraced a little technology and moved on a little bit, but you can't escape creepy dolls, Rob, in horror movies.
No, but see, Child's Play, I love Child's Play. There's your next documentary, Child's Play. And I actually just saw I saw a clip, and I think we're all progressive in this room, but I saw a clip of Chucky, I guess, saying that he had a transgender son in the new movie, or the new TV series. And he goes, well, how does that make you feel? He goes, I'm okay with it. I'm not a monster. And I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. But Chucky doesn't scare me. Chucky never scared me. There was nothing ever from the original Child's Play. It was a fun movie. Scream never scared me. I just felt like I could watch those characters and they were like my friends. They were like people that I went to school with or went to campgrounds in the middle of the night, with. That's who those people felt like. So even that movie at its core, it was just such a fun movie. It wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't like terrifyingly scary to me. There were a lot of jump scares, but Paranormal Activity, oh my God. I don't know anybody that's seen the movie and not been like, yeah, I might have peed a little bit. It's one of those movies that does that to you. So unbelievable. I cannot wait to hear the stories from the set and all the interviews. It sounds like it's going to be a rip-roaring good time. Now, being that it is on a streaming service, was it cut down in time?
No, what was great was being on a streaming service is we didn't really have a time constraint.
Okay.
They, like it could be any length we wanted. Up to, I think they said it couldn't be longer than 2 hours and not shorter than 90 minutes. And I think that was just kind of like, that was just what they built in.
Okay.
Contract. But we feel like we told the story enough. I mean, like there are 4-hour documentaries and stuff like that, but we told a very complete story. I feel like the length is totally appropriate for it. You mentioned stories on set. I could tell you 2 behind the scenes stories that our crew dealt with.
Ooh, please.
Well, there was when Rachel and I were at Paramount pitching the documentary. There, as I said, there were 5 women there, and one of them was from the home video. I think when we got back home, this woman had emailed us and said, right when you guys left, and we all went back to our offices, and she's like, I went into my office, and my Paranormal Activity, I think 2 poster had fallen off the wall and shattered. The frame and everything had just all of a sudden fall. She walked into her office, it fell and it shattered. And she's like, this was a poster that was bolted to my wall. And we were like,
God.
oh my God, it's ghosts, it's crazy. And I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? Like, what the fuck? Another story we had was we rented this little black box theater to shoot some of these interviews in Burbank. And we showed up one day, we had rented it for maybe 20 days, we rented it when we needed it. And then one time we walked in and there was this fly infestation, just flies everywhere. You understand, I've never seen this. I've rented tons of places. And so me and Rachel and Joe, I think I have a video of Joe like literally taking a book and like swatting them in midair because we had in, and Joe was like whacking people, and I said, all right, I'm gonna leave. So I go down the street, I get in my car and I zip down to the sporting goods store and I run in there like Bette Midler in that Beverly Hills movie where she's like, call 911, call. And I run in there and I'm like, where's your bug spray? Where's your bug spray? And they sold me bug spray, and I go running back and I go running in and I'm spraying and Rachel's swatting, and like there was this awful fly infestation. And so we have a couple of interviewees that came in that day who we had to stop the interview because you'd see flies coming in. And I was so embarrassed. I was like, this is professional.
That's some Amityville horror level shit right there. Rod Steiger.
Totally. The woman who rented us the place, I called her and I said, you need to do something. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, we don't have flies. And I'm like, they're dead on the floor. Like, come on down. And she did. And she came on down and she's looking around going, and she's with her boyfriend. I remember them looking at it going, what the fuck is going on? So what happened was, well, very quickly, somebody else had rented it the next day. And I said, well, you better fix it for this next group. She said, and then I had rented it the next day. So we had a fly infestation like on a Monday. She rented it out to someone else for like this little barbecue. And then we were coming back in. The barbecue people had no flies. And you have to understand, this is food, like whatever, no flies. We come back the next day and they had flies again. So whenever we showed up, or in this weekend, we had flies and we couldn't explain it. But it just, there was a woman we had interviewed who had said that she felt like this presence had followed her home. And it's, I'm not really a believer, I should say that, but these things make me question like, what the fuck is going on?
Well, I mean, when we, and so I don't know if Nate knows this story, he probably doesn't, but when Tony and friends, we started doing these things during the Halloween H2O party planning, and we ended up out in Amityville, and I don't know if it was you or Jonathan. It was probably Jonathan was going to pick up something off the lawn. It was only like a stick or something. And I'm like, you're not bringing that in the car. We're not bringing, there's nothing from Amityville House that is coming anywhere near, me. I actually went up and knocked on the door and said that we were, what did I say? College students?
All right, let me just briefly tell this story. Because I will tell it correctly, because I was horrified. Rob said, I'm going to knock on the door. And I said, no, you're fucking not going to knock on the door. We saw someone walking in there. Rob walks up to the door and knocks on it. The guy opens it, and the Rob says the wrong thing. He says, "We're not gonna hurt you." I
Oh, that's right. I did say that. I did say, maybe it was we agreed.
was like, "Run!" You're running back. I was like, "Why would you say I'm not gonna hurt you? Why would you say that?"
Maybe it was because, and what's funny is like I'm an actor now. I could probably do much better than I did, but didn't we decide that we were going to be college people or something like that?
You said it though, like with a smile. You didn't say it threatening. I remember you were very much like, "No, listen, we're not gonna hurt you." You said it nicely, but could you imagine living there and being like, "This guy's gonna hurt me"? He just like slammed the door. And I was like,
and it was a younger kid. It was like, it wasn't like a little boy, but it was like a teenager, maybe even college age. And we went to the worst McDonald's on the planet ever. They had a teepee outside. It was, I remember so much about that day, and it's such a long drive. There's no easy way to get to anywhere in Long Island. No easy way.
Exactly.
Oh, old times. But yeah, I do believe that stuff follows you around. So, I mean, hey, I'm sure there's something to that. I mean, you can't, people will tell you that you can't like make the movies about things like the occult and, Ouija boards and all that other stuff. I mean, the stories that came out of The Conjuring, and Annabelle is I guess right up there in that house. Well, the Warrens' place. I guess Ed is dead. I don't know if the other Lorraine is the other woman. I don't know if she's.
Yeah, I think they both are now. Yeah.
Are they both dead now? So Annabelle sits somewhere there, like she's a real thing. And all I know is I don't want to see her, but there's part of me that wants to see her, and I don't know why. I have no idea. I have no idea why. Like, I won't even buy like there's the NECA stuff. Nope. I can't do it. I really can't. But anywho. So once again, Anthony, Nate, thank you. The title of the documentary is Unknown Dimension, The Story of Paranormal Activity, premiering October 29th on Paramount Plus. And it premieres the same day as the new Paranormal Activity movie coming out. Next of Kin. So again, Nate, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you. Tony, old hat, but I love you. You're not old and you're not a hat. If you're out,
yeah, thank you for having us on.
Yes.
If you're out in LA, and you can go to the Magic Castle, I highly encourage you to go see Tony. And he's an awesome magician. You can catch it if you YouTube Penn and Teller Fool Us, Anthony Masi. You're going to be amazed at what he did. Penn and Teller were amazed. I believe his daughter that said that it was one of the best things she'd ever seen.
Yeah, close. Yeah, Penn's kids were in the audience that night and said that I was their favorite magician of the night.
That's what it was.
The greatest thing they had ever seen.
Yeah, what the hell. So I've been trying to get Tony to tell me his secrets for years. He did sleight of hand like when we first met, and I love magic. I love David Copperfield, which was another thing that brought Tony and I, closer together. He did this sleight of hand bullshit, and it still pisses me off. But again, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us, and we hope to have you. Well, next week we have the Halloween Kills Roundtable. Anthony is going to try to make it. I'm really hoping that Nate can make it as well. And we are going to be talking with a bunch of people that have been on the show before in different aspects. And we're going to be talking about Halloween Kills because there are a lot of strong opinions about this movie. You're looking at 3 people on your screen that actually really, really enjoyed this movie. There are people that did not. Although I am seeing a tide starting to turn as people go and watch it multiple times, which is great. I love it. So that is coming next week. That will be released right before Halloween. And I hope to see you guys there. So good being back in the studio. Like I said, it's been way too long. I promise you it will not be this long again. It's been one crazy summer. And like I said before, not the film, which I wish it was. That would have been a lot more enjoyable. But As always, I am Rob. Love you guys. I will see you later, and I am out. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
The Rock and Horror Popcast Show is brought to you by Dockside Productions, recorded in Studio 217 in Opatcong, New Jersey, and mixed through the magic of Audacity. Our theme song is The Flood from the album Brightside by Mike Hers, and can be found on Apple Music and Spotify. Please check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Like, follow, and subscribe to be kept up to date on everything new.